What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here, back with another Week 5 preview, and we have another huge SEC matchup this weekend, and it is going to impact the SEC West race in the biggest way possible. And we got the two favorites in that division matching up this weekend in Tuscaloosa, Bryant-Denny Stadium. Alabama, number one in the country, welcoming Ole Miss, number 12 ranked team in the country, into Bryant-Denny. Kicks off at 2:30 p.m. Central Time, live on CBS. And the Crimson Tide are a 14.5 point favorite over the 12 ranked Rebels. And this is going to be probably one of the more hyped SEC matchups of the year, especially after last year's 63-48 shootout in Oxford. And many are considering this game the biggest regular season test for the Crimson Tide all season. And so if the Crimson Tide pass this one, it will give them their second top 12 win of the season and really set them in the driver's seat for the SEC West crown this season. Now, for storylines going into this game, the Crimson Tide come in, as I said, the number one ranked team in the country, and they're going to be looking to make a statement. It was kind of shocking. They went into Gainesville, escaped with a 2 point win, but there's a media narrative and a fan narrative that in that game, they showed a lot of holes that some people think some teams, such as Ole Miss, can exploit. So I promise you, Nick Saban and this team are going to be looking to make a statement win to say, that's y'all can say what y'all want, but we are here to stay at this top spot. Now, this is also going to be a perfect stage for Bryce Young to put on one of his Heisman moment performances. He's going up against potentially his biggest competition. This is a chance for Bryce Young to solidify himself as the favorite as we enter this mid-season stretch in college football. Now, on the flip side, the Rebels are coming in at 3-0, coming off almost a perfectly placed bye week for them. To get 2 weeks to prepare to go into Tuscaloosa is huge for Lane Kiffin and this squad. And they're looking to pull off a huge upset to kick off their 2021 SEC gauntlet. And for me, also, Lane Kiffin is looking to become the first Saban assistant ever to beat Nick Saban. So, and a lot of people thought they was confident he could possibly do it last year. This year, he's even got more hype behind him to do that. While Matt Corral, just similar like I talked about with Bryce Young, has a chance to solidify himself as a Heisman favorite with a huge win. And we've seen a bunch of people solidify their Heisman campaigns with big wins in Bryant-Denny Stadium with upsets of Alabama. You look at Johnny Manziel, Cam Newton, all those guys, those performances in Bryant-Denny played a huge role in solidifying themselves as the SEC legends that they are. Now, the Crimson Tide have won the last 5 matchups with the Rebels, and which is, this is a crazy stat I didn't know. Ole Miss has only won 4 games against Alabama since 2000, and the Crimson Tide have historically dominated this series 52-10 with 2 ties over the history of this matchup. So the Crimson Tide have a long and storied history in this rivalry, and right now they're looking to make it 6 in a row over the Rebels this weekend. Now, let's get into our keys of the game, man. The key for the Crimson Tide has been the same every time I've covered them. It's just to let Bryce Young be the distributor and get the ball to the playmakers on the outside and let them go make plays in open field because their wide receivers should have the advantage against any DB on the field for the Rebels. Now, the Crimson Tide passing game has been extremely explosive this year and has really carried this team in the biggest moments that they've had thus far. They're averaging over 310 yards per game through the air over the first 4 games. And it's really due, especially in the second half against Florida. The run game's still trying to find its rhythm after losing such a talented running back such as Najee Harris. They have a lot of talented running backs in that stable right now, but that running game has not really picked up as much steam as this passing attack has. So that's why it's also a key. It's what you do best right now. And on the flip side of that, Bryce Young has lived up to every bit of the hype that he had coming into Tuscaloosa as the number one quarterback in the country. He's shown that he can win games, in I guess hyped SEC moments, you look at what he did at Gainesville against the top 15 team. And this year, he's already thrown for over 1,100 passing yards, 15 passing touchdowns, only one turnover, and he's completing over 72% of his passes throughout the first 4 games. It is an elite level of production for Bryce Young thus far. And my biggest thing for him is he's looked poised through it all. I've never seen the moment look too big for Bryce Young this season. And so for me, he is going to be a key. And I've said this, as we covered some Jackson State games this year and everything, he's just got to be Rajon Rondo, the equivalent of Rajon Rondo. I don't need you to go out there and put up a bunch of points by yourself and try to force things. I just need you to distribute the ball to the playmakers on the outside and let them make buckets. Let them go get touchdown. Let them go make plays. Don't turn the ball over. Be efficient and be smart with the football. That's all I need from Bryce Young this weekend. Let the wide receivers on the outside do your thing. And he's done that so well. This Bama offense to me has taken a huge step forward this season because Young has shown the ability to attack all levels of the defense. It exposes your weaknesses wherever they may be. Oh, you're not great at mid-range passes. Well, guess what? He can throw those. You're not good at the short game. You don't cover underneath routes well. He can abuse you there. And let's say you got all that covered. If your back into your defense is weak and you can get beat over the top, he has the arm talent to get it behind you. And you're going to have a problem stopping this offense. This Rebels defense is going to be tested. Will they pass this test? You look at his short range numbers: 375 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 85% completion percentage on passes 0 to 9 yards. You go to medium, 10 to 19, 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, and his Pro Football Focus grade is a 92.4, one of the best in the country. And then the deep ball, 20 plus yards down the field, 242 yards, 4 touchdowns. His one pick also came there, and he has a 91.3 Pro Football Focus grade, one of the best marks in the country. This kid has done everything that's been asked of him and more, and he's going to be the key for this offense to move forward. Now, the wide receiving core for the Crimson Tide has been electric, especially for me, the most underrated transfer of this offseason, it was Jamison Williams from Ohio State. He has been a star these first 4 games. Him and John Mechie are easily the top 2 targets, and these guys are going to be X factors this weekend against this Rebels defense. 12 catches, 300 yards for Williams, 3 receiving touchdowns, and this kid is averaging almost 25 yards per catch. That is just a ridiculous number. He had 2 kick returns last week as well. So he is deadly fast. This kid has to be contained. And if Ole Miss just gives up a rash of explosive plays, it can get ugly in Bryant-Denny this weekend. Now, Mechie, 24 catches, 240, and 1 receiving touchdown. He's just been consistent, and he's really done a great job. Williams has evolved into the deep threat, while Mechie's been kind of the safety net underneath guy that's going to catch those every down balls. They're a deadly duo, and Ole Miss is going to have to try to find a way to stop them. Now, another interesting spot is that tight end spot for Young in this passing attack. Bill O'Brien's offense has utilized tight ends in a variety of creative ways, and it really could be something to watch this weekend. Jaleel Billingsley, 6 catches, 131, and 2 touchdowns, while Cameron Latou, 119, 8 catches, and 4 receiving touchdowns. These guys are red zone threats, and they've also shown they can make explosive plays due to the defensive focus being elsewhere on this Alabama offense. So watch out for the tight ends. Then also look out for Jace McClellan coming out of the backfield. He already has 3 receiving touchdowns this season. It could be an interesting matchup nightmare for this Ole Miss defense if he gets matched up on a linebacker. So look out for McClellan as well. But moving on to Ole Miss here, the key for the Rebels, man, is to just let Matt Corral do what Matt Corral does. That's make plays, be a playmaker, and go be explosive. But at the same time, what Ole Miss can't do is be one-dimensional. They are going to have to keep that balanced approach and also do some things on the ground, which they did last year, which was what made that game so special, is that Ole Miss was able to score both on the ground and through the air. Now, Corral is probably the Heisman favorite right now at that number 1 spot, and kind of depending on what media source you use, but this is the perfect stage to put him as the clear leader as we hit that midseason stretch. But he's thrown for over 1,000 yards, 9 passing touchdowns, and 5 rushing touchdowns with zero turnovers. It's an elite level of production thus far in the season over 3 games. Now, the things that Corral has to do this weekend: avoid turnovers, be efficient, and make plays outside the pocket. You have to put pressure on this Alabama defense by pushing the ball down the field, attacking them in weak spots, and also just keeping them off balance. If you can do that as an offense, you have a shot to win this game. But the number one thing is you cannot turn the ball over. That if Ole Miss loses the turnover battle, it's going to be a long day for the Rebels. They cannot turn the ball over, and that's what ultimately cost them last year's game down the stretch. Now, the Ole Miss rushing game, I said they still had to be balanced, has multiple guys who can handle that lead role, and that's going to give them an advantage. That's exactly what Florida did down the stretch, is have four guys, including Emory Jones, which Matt Corral is also a threat on the ground, to go make plays and kind of stretch this Alabama defense, put the linebackers in uncomfortable spots. Jaron Ely, 190 and a touchdown. Paris has over 100 yards rushing, averaging over 7 yards per carry. And Snoop Connor also has 3 rushing touchdowns. So any of these guys can be a feature back. They need to keep fresh bodies in there, and they need to try to create explosive running plays and a consistent rushing attack, just like Florida did a few weeks ago where they almost pulled the upset. Now, the key is if they do this, Corral is much better equipped than Emory Jones was to take advantage of the loaded boxes and that passing defense for the Crimson Tide once they start loading the box. He can get over the top in a way that Emory Jones could not. So that's why this matchup is so much more dangerous than what Alabama faced 2 weeks ago against Florida. Now, the offensive line for the Rebels is also going to be key because Alabama is going to come after Corral. They're going to try to make him uncomfortable in the pocket, force him out of the pocket, and force him into some uncomfortable positions. Now, they have to make sure Corral has time to push the ball down the field and make plays. The O-line for the Rebels has performed well this season, but they really haven't seen a defensive line that compares to what they're going to see this weekend in Bryant-Denny. They've only allowed 3 sacks, 11 hurries, and 19 pressures. But on the flip side, Bama has 14 sacks and 38 pressures over their first 4 games. Jeremy James at offensive tackle has by far been the best offensive lineman for the Rebels. He's the highest graded pass blocker on the Rebels O-line. But the problem is the weak point for them is the middle. That center guard spot is not the strongest spot for this Rebels offensive line. And DJ Dell and Fedarian Mathis are too good. You're going to have to step up this weekend if you play on that interior of the Ole Miss offensive line. Now, the matchup to watch was tough because you could go one of multiple ways, in my opinion. For me, though, the Ole Miss wide receivers against this Alabama secondary is going to have to be the matchup of the week because it's strength versus strength. It's that electric passing game for Ole Miss against a defensive backfield that is littered with future NFL talent that has done a great job of making teams one-dimensional and forcing turnovers through the air. Now, the offense relies on Matt Corral making plays through the air, and it has to start with these wide receivers creating separation and making plays down the field because, like I said, you cannot become one-dimensional. Dontario Drummond and Jonathan Mingo have been the top wide receivers for the Rebels thus far, and they're going to have their best game of the season. Drummond already has over 330 yards, 4 touchdowns, and grades out as one of the best wide receivers in the country thus far in the season. Mingo's got almost 300 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns as well. So those 2 guys are going to have to be playmakers, and they're going to have big games this weekend if Ole Miss plans on pulling off the upset. Now, Braylon Sanders is someone to watch because Drummond and Mingo are going to get a lot of defensive looks their way. So can Sanders be ready to step up and make plays while Ely and Parrish out the backfield are also going to have to be receiving threats? The Alabama secondary has only allowed 167 yards per game through the air this season per game. And their best players are in that secondary, and they've been opportunistic. They've forced over an interception, like 1.5 interceptions per game on average this season. And they have the athletes in the back end where if they get a pick, they have the athletic ability to take it to the house and get a huge touchdown or get great field position for their offense. So that's going to be something to watch. Now, it all starts with Josh Jobe and Jordan Battle, both of which have an argument for the best player at their position in the country, especially Jordan Battle at safety, man. This kid is electric. But my X factor, man, and every time I mention this kid every time I cover Alabama, Malachi Moore, I think, has the potential as he continues to mature and develop to be the best defensive back in the country. He is just he's like a jack of all trades on the back end. And for me, I think he's the best playmaker on the back end and one of the best ball hawking, kind of nickel guys in the country right now, especially even just as a true sophomore. So watch out for Malachi Moore. And for this matchup, the Ole Miss wide receivers have to find ways to give Corral high percentage throws while also finding ways to make explosive plays happen, which is really going to break this game open for the Rebels. But the Alabama DBs are going to be looking to force turnovers and limit explosive plays, which really plagued them in this matchup last year. They just let too many explosive plays go by, especially early in that game. Now, for my official prediction, man, I know a lot of people are very, very high on Ole Miss this year, and I think it's a very talented team. I just am of the mindset right now, just based on all the film I've watched, looking at the athletes that they have in that secondary for Alabama. I think Matt Corral has his first turnovers this weekend. I think he probably throws a pick or two, and I think that's the difference in the game. I think this game is very similar early to last year's game, where it's a back and forth score fest early, but just in the fourth quarter, I think Ole Miss makes one or two mistakes that allows Alabama to pull away late. And if this game was in Oxford, it probably is a completely different story. But going into Bryant-Denny, I just don't think Ole Miss is going to be able to pull it off this year. I think Lane Kiffin is one or two recruiting classes away from really having a contender. And right now, I think Nick Saban is going to be more motivated than ever based off of last year's game to make a statement this weekend. So I have the Alabama Crimson Tide 48, the Ole Miss Rebels 35. So I got them winning by double digits, man, 13 points, which isn't necessarily covering the spread, which might shift as we get closer to game time. But I got the Crimson Tide 48, the Rebels 35 this weekend in Tuscaloosa. Guys, if you made it this far, smash that subscribe button. Also, hit that thumbs up button on this video. And man, just make sure to subscribe because we got so much college football content coming y'all's way. And also, comment your score predictions below and let me know your thoughts on the game. Love to hear what y'all are thinking and what y'all are seeing in terms of this awesome SEC West matchup at 2:30 p.m. Central Time, live on CBS. We have another Week 5 preview dropping this afternoon. Iowa at Maryland on Friday night will be a huge Big Ten matchup. We previewed Arkansas and Georgia yesterday, and we also previewed Cincinnati, Notre Dame yesterday, two top 10 matchups. So make sure to check out those on our Week 5 college football content playlist and hit that subscribe button one last time, man. Appreciate the support. Appreciate y'all tuning in. But for right now, the Blue Bloods are out.